I get a lot of pushback on de-emphasized grades. A lot of people really, and rightfully so, say, but students want the grades, parents want the grades. And I'm not saying it's easy work, but I'm saying that most of the really good learning is ungraded learning.
I was just sobbing this past week in a chemistry classroom, and these students, they wanted to know about me. And then when they're like, oh, you podcast, oh, you skydive, like, you also sub, you tutor, like, you don't live a boring life.
I love how academic kind of, traditionalists really see the power of CTE. I love that transition. I think we're all starting in an academic world. We're like, oh, okay, we gotta get. And then we see this new light in CTE.
You cannot continually direct lecture students without losing the attention battle. And I mean, I don't care if you're the best storyteller in the world. In 20 minutes, they need to construct meaning for themselves.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education podcast, powered by U Science. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education podcast. I'm Peter Hostrawser. We're here with Alli Dahl. Our guest is coming up in a minute, but before we get there, how are the chickens, Alli?
Oh, you want a chicken update this week?
I went right into the chickens.
You're coming for my chickens. They are, so fun fact about chickens, they get stress below about like 45 degrees Fahrenheit. And like, meaning they're, and above like, it's like 80 degrees. So they have a pretty narrow temperature range in which they are like thermodynamically stable and happy.
You are such a science teacher, just saying that one sentence right there is got chemistry written all over. Okay, yeah. Good, sorry.
Well, it's been in their comfort range, and this episode will come out in the springtime. And so, they're thriving after what has been, as I'm sure most people listening to this podcast experienced, a pretty brutal winter. And it's not over yet at the time of this recording, but it's fun to see like their personalities come out more when they're not like so much in survival mode, and like they're cold, right? Like in the wintertime. And so they're conserving energy and everything. So their personalities come out more. They're like more playful. And I know, Peter, you're like, I didn't know any of this about chickens, but they have a lot of personality, and they like peck on you more, like, and it's not painful. They're just like, pay attention to me. Like they'll kind of like be at your feet and be like, pick me up. And they look at you with their cute little eyes. And they are my pets, right? Like the backyard chickens, and they're my pets, but they are very fun right now. I will say that.
Yes. Well, I'm going to try to transition that into our guest, which I love. Like it's fluent. They're fluent, right? So they're fluent when it gets warmer. So there you go. Folks, we have Dr. Sandra Adams back again. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm well. I could not figure out for the life of me how chickens was going to transition. So the fluency, nice job, Peter. It's great to be back.
Just grab them and so, but no, we always Alli, there's a couple things that we always talk about, right? It's either you're jumping out of airplanes or these awesome chickens. And we're trying to combine those, but I don't know if that'll have a good outcome. So, but that's something we're going to get into with the book that we want to talk about a little bit today, and basically you. But if you don't mind giving people, I mean, you have so many titles, you've done so many things. Give people like, who is Dr. Sandra Adams today?
Today, I am a tired principal over 5 buildings and 23 programs, and director for the area CTE in Allen County, and that's Fort Wayne, Indiana, for people who don't know me. And on the side, the other title that I proudly wear is the current VP for the admin division of ACTE. And this is my last year. I've entered the last year phase, which is already like, how does it go by so fast? But so I am at heart a real education nerd. I have to say that my hobbies are learning and writing and reading. And yeah, I was kind of an academic elitist at one time. I taught the AP classes and was a college adjunct in the evening and had no knowledge of CTE. decided I would start my own little professional learning company. First person who hired me from outside of an ESC was the director of a CTE center, and I never left. I just absolutely fell in love with the side of education that I had never seen before. And yeah, so instructional coaching was what I had done so many years, which really led to all the books. The books were just me understanding this isn't side of education. Now, remember, this is back in like 2014, 15 when I first started. And back then, CTE was largely ignored.
Yeah.
And so I started in that journey and really just started to frame things in CTE. And even though my titles keep changing, I've never lost the passion for just supporting career and tech teachers with that very specific type of learning.
Yeah, awesome. We've heard that before, Allie, right? Like I was struggling academic, then all of a sudden here it is,
Yeah.
and here we are.
You always knew you've been riding this for longer than most, and then you started a podcast about it.
Yeah, I didn't like academics that much. I just love the CTE part.
I love that you said though, Sandra, like academic elitist, and I'd call you, a CTE pioneer. You're definitely on the forefront of leading the way in CTE, and you've done a ton of work. What you even just brought up is not even all of the work that you do. It's like this little snippet. Yes. So you wrote a book, and you've had more than one book, but Fluent Work is your most recent. And I'm just curious, like why now? Like why write the book? Like why is it important? What is it? What are you seeing in education for like, it's like a lot of work to write a book, and you better have something behind it. So to give us a little background.
Okay, so I've never shared this with anybody, but a podcast is always the best place, right? So, truthfully, my co-author and really dear friend back in 2015, do you remember Race to the Top back in the Obama age? Okay, so I had been a person that was going around the state doing trainings on, this is when we first introduced like text-based, evidence-based literacy. And I was traveling around Indiana and Ohio teaching that model to different teachers and really focusing on that aspect of literacy. And everyone kept coming up to me saying, but I'm not a reading teacher. I'm a content person, but I'm not a reading teacher. I'm in CTE. So my friend and I write this book called, But I'm Not a Reading Teacher. And this is, you'll enjoy this. This is 2015. We thought we were so cutting edge because we included QR codes throughout the book. I mean, we thought like, oh yeah, that is legit technology right there. And now fast forward. So a year and a half ago, I realized that like a third of those QRs don't work anymore. So I was like, oh, what were we thinking? We didn't think that through. But anyway, I sat down to do a second edition of But I'm Not a Reading Teacher. And then as I was reading it, I'm like, well, this is debunked. This is debunked. This isn't really holding pace anymore in the age of acceleration. This could be better. So what I was going to do was revise it. But every single section, I was completely rewriting it. And then, you have to factor in, so how does AI factor in and could make this better? So almost every single thing in the book could have been better either through AI or new research and what we now know. And just, you're talking, 7 years? And all of it is now just really needed updated. So I pitched the idea, pitched it out, not pitched it like this. But I just said, you know what? I really need to come up with what is literacy today. And I'm really, it's really a brave thing to do to come up with your own model for literacy. I mean, anytime I do a workshop, I always start with this line. I am not an expert in literacy, have never claimed to be. I just think that what we do at school should model what we do in reality. And that's what the book is. It's just this different frame of reference. So I use this acronym called TWIRLS. And I give WIDA credit because they had swirls as their literacy model, which is thinking about speaking, writing, reading, listening. So as I was going through, what I've always been the most passionate about is thinking. And so the T in twirls is thinking. And you can't separate literacy from thinking.
Mhm.
And even when it's the distracted brain that, you're reading 2 pages and then you realize you haven't read anything or comprehended anything. I mean, even the distracted brain is really thinking, because what were you thinking about, right? When you were distracted. And so I just really started to concentrate and focus on, how do students read? How do they take in so many different points of data, and how do they construct meaning for their worlds? And what are we doing in the classroom that mirrors that with the text, the quality, the rigor of the text, the multiple sources? Because I don't think there's anything more important than the synergizing multiple sources, because that's what we all do all day long.
Yeah.
And so that's what I tried to do.
Okay.
So we're here writing notes, by the way. That's what we do. And we always encourage our listeners, get a notebook. And I
It's
have
a
my
good
handy
idea.
Disrupt Education notebook here, and just constantly writing. So if we're looking down, it's not like
I know. I
that's
do
what
the
we're
same thing.
doing. So that's
Look,
what we
right
always
now, I
tell.
have a pen in my hand right now, Peter. I do the
Always,
very same
always, right?
thing. Uh-huh.
So yeah, I really like that look. Obviously AI is reshaping work. Definitely 7 years. Man, that doesn't seem like a long time, and how fast things are working. All of this, our employers are now beginning to hire for skills over seat time. These kids are going to navigate multiple careers, not just one pathway. And yet we're still kind of structured for like the old school predictability instead of
Yeah.
adaptability. So, in your mind, what if literacy and work weren't separate worlds in education? What do you hope to see? Like what does that look like to you?
So one of the, you said the word adapt, and
Yeah,
adaptability has to be right beside curiosity in shaping the next generation of workers. And so one of the things that I always emphasize is, well, I'll ask you guys, do you want to pretend like you're in one of my workshops for a
sure,
second?
let's go.
Okay.
Let's
So,
give the listeners a brief
okay,
what
here
could
we go.
happen if Sandy comes to your school.
So 4-year-olds, right?
Oh, I can do that.
Okay. How many questions does the average 4-year-old ask a day?
2 to 300.
Okay, so one of
Is
the
that true?
common research numbers is 300. So we'll go
Oh
with
my
that.
gosh, I was
Now,
going to say
Yeah.
70.
no,
Oh,
it's
It's in the
300.
hundreds.
I must
It's
have blocked
300
that from my
400
my
is what
kids
I've
when they were
read
young.
multiple times, right? So that same student then enters elementary and travels through middle school and gets to where I am, where most of us are in CTE, 10th and 11th grade, right? How many questions, academic questions,
Mhm.
does a typical junior ask in a day?
In high school,
Mhm.
-4.
Less than 10.
Ever said a negative, Peter? Nice job.
I teach high
Two.
school.
Two is the
Two.
answer.
Yeah, there you
Two is
go.
what I've found. So, and as a person who has worked with juniors and seniors for about 30 years, it's
Wow.
probably, when you take all of those students in that room, you're either the questioner or you're not, right?
Mm.
And so the average is very accurate. And so then what I typically say is, how does it happen? Well, it happens because, as Sir Ken Robbins has pointed out numerous times, we kill curiosity in
Mhm.
school because we condition students to raise their hand, and then we give them all of this reward for that answer. And so if you would reframe the literacy around not you as the teacher being the focus of that classroom, but just merging in with the students and being a part of the learning process. Like, I love the concept of lead learner.
Mhm.
And so what I always really try to hammer is, we are the reason that kids don't ask the questions and don't have that curiosity factor. And so how do you bring that back after all of these years of conditioning? Because you have to know that it's the school system that does it. And so
Mhm.
how can I undo it? And I get a lot of pushback on de-emphasized grades. a lot of people really, and rightfully so, say, but students want the grades, parents want the grades. And I'm not saying it's easy work, but I'm saying that most of the really good learning is ungraded learning.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And, just really making that rigor the center point of it. So we do a lot of work around a matrix. For instance, I created this comparison matrix where you put 3 different areas across the top, and then down the vertical side you put like 4 criteria, and then have students figure out a comparison matrix around that, and then lead them into, so how do you do a think, pair, share, and engage students around synthesizing that information so that they're thinking, they're writing, they're reading, they're listening, and they're speaking. And I go through several models of what that looks like, always using some kind of text. And so it's just to show that you can't separate the thinking rigor from the rest. So here's another, you ready for another challenge, Peter?
Yeah, let's go.
Alli? Okay. So what
like
percent, grades 4 through 12, what percent of multiple choice test questions are typically written at what I would call DOK 1 and 2, or just either memorization or understanding level?
84%.
It's probably 80 to 90.
Yes, it's between 75 and 82%.
Wow.
Wow, you were close.
I know.
And
It's better than negative
multiple
4.
sources. I get nervous about people pointing
Yeah,
me to be wrong, so I always get multiple sources. So it's somewhere in that range. But they had posed this question in one of the mastery articles that I had written, or I had read, and the question was, what level of a content expert do you have to be to teach effectively? And then the short of the article was, surprisingly, you don't, because most teachers teach at the comprehension level. And so you can stay surface and really just stay like a week or 2 ahead of the students. And, obviously you don't want to say that that's what we're doing, but it takes so much deliberate lesson planning to create those strategic thinking exercises and connect them to literacy and to content.
Got it.
And so that's what I'm just kind of on a mission to really try to get people to do better.
Yeah.
That is bold work, because you probably get a lot of pushback. Like, that's not easy work. I'm thinking like, what I'm picturing, you come in and if depending on the audience, like, right, you got to change some mindsets first. With like, I'm sure you have very open audiences as well. You also have like, you have it's like feast or famine in kind of a regard, because there are some people that are like hungry for this type, like, it's like, yes, I can de-emphasize grades, I can I can be a lead learner, I can do all this different stuff, and it's okay. And then the more traditional model, which is, I am the expert, I am the guru, I am leading the way, right? Like, you might get totally different reactions out of people. So I commend you for the work in literacy. So right, you said you open with like, I'm not a literacy expert, but like, how did your experiences then, like as an administrator and as your work, as a consultant, shape like your thinking around fluency, around literacy, and just like the kind of the future of education? Because like your book, you just said you had to rewrite the whole thing, and because 7 years it had totally changed. So that means that like, we're looking at the future, we're not looking at the past. That's been thrown out. Your book is like, nope, we are moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, so one of the concepts that I started the book with, I was, so you write the book and then you go back and do the foreword. I don't know if you know that. That's a common way
Yep.
to approach it, and that's what I had done as well. And so I knew that I wanted to. I'm a Thomas Friedman nut. Like if I could get coffee someday with him, I would probably keep him in the restaurant for 5 hours. I devour everything that he writes, and he's just so interesting to me because he is the author of The World is Flat, and then Thank You for Being Late, and he is the one that really opened my eyes to Moore's law, and that the amount of information at our disposal doubles every 18 months. That's Moore's law. And so when you think about what we have right now is going to double before we hit 2 years from now. And what are you going to do with that? And that is a lot of information. And so I try to point out that we are really in an attention game with students. And so, we're hitting 15,000 images and concepts a day is something like that. And then if you're on TikTok and Instagram and all of those, I'm sure it's even higher. And so when you think about students and trying to get their attention, you cannot continually direct lecture students without losing the attention battle. And I mean, I don't care if you're the best storyteller in the world, in 20 minutes, they need to construct meaning for themselves. And so that is one of I call them like Sandyisms, but you can't construct meaning for someone else. I live by that. And, and you think about yourselves and going back towards your own high school learning. And if you had to write down, like, what were the best 3 lessons that you had in all of high school? I mean, for me, thank goodness I grew up in the 70s and 80s, not to date myself, but we did this biology lesson on gronking. And I'm no scientist as you are, Alli, but I remember gronking like it was yesterday. And it's because this man had created the best way in the world to teach us how to do measurements of weather and wind and ground temperature and how to factor it all together. And, those are the things that you remember 30 years out of high school. And, it's just the curiosity aspect to me is how can you take what you were going to teach and design a lesson so that students do the thinking work and students make the mistakes. And I mean, personally, I love organized chaos. I think it is the sign of an amazing classroom,
Yes.
right? Yes. Organized chaos is where the magic is. And I just think that sometimes we give up on what it is we want them to read and think about too soon, and we don't pull enough sources. Like I said earlier, I just think multiple sources and infographics, all of it comes together, and then you're really also connecting that numeracy and literacy together, which is what we do in real life.
We just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, UScience BrightPath.
What we've learned about UScience BrightPath, is that this tool is the best tool in order to help a kid or a young person or you, right? It really doesn't matter like your age, but you want to know what you're apt at and combine that with what you're interested in to pick a next step. I haven't seen a better option on the market, and that's why we love them. That's why they're one of our awesome sponsors.
My kids use it. So if you're going to ask me about an ed tech company and do you believe in it? I mean, I've used it with my 2 children, right? I have conversations with my own kids and talking about, okay, this is what you're good at. This is what you're interested in. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at all the options here and let's vet through them. And by the way, those options constantly update. How can you get more real time than that?
Right. I'm just waiting for them to add skydiving instructor into the mix. I don't know how you test for aptitudes on that. If they need help, I can help them.
You start with the individual in education. That's what we've been talking about in CTE all the time. Who are they? Who is the individual in front of you? And even in the internship programs that I've worked with, it really starts with the student. It doesn't say, you're good at math, you should go this way. That's the old traditional kind of way that we thought worked. But we also know that there's data out there that that doesn't really work, right? So once a student knows who they are and kind of how they're wired to succeed, honestly, then you start to build from that. And that's the foundation. And what I like about UScience BrightPath is really it doesn't stop there. It can create a plan, individualized plan. And for us in CTE, that really helps me as an educator and even a father understand how can I really take a look at different industries and different connections that I have or that are in our community or anywhere for that matter. I mean, we have, these social networks that are business oriented. How can we help a student or again, my own kids understand and connect directly with these people? And I mean, it's all here. It's right in the platform.
If you're like interested in this, you want to learn more, we've got the link in the show notes. It's going to pop up on the screen. Check it out, learn more. They have demos. You can learn more about it, and we just love it.
Number one, I love the chaos as well. I've
Yeah.
said that over and over too. My directors are like, "Are you all right? You got a lot of things going on." I'm like, "Yeah, this is where you
This is where I
thrive,
live.
right?" Like,
Yeah.
but and this is where our students thrive, and
Mhm.
in a safe, chaotic environment sometimes. And definitely as an internship coordinator, I see that all the time. I mean, as soon as like they get two offers in, they freak out. They're like, got to make a decision. It's chaotic. And they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to make one mad and the other one I'm like, you're not going to make them mad. You're just going to give them clarity. But that's
Mhm.
chaos to the kids and bringing that out. So I really love the way that you're kind of going into that curiosity. I do a lot of work around reading about distraction, deep work. Indistractable is a great book. Deep work. Mark Isaacs as well, right, Allie? I know you probably wrote that down because
I did. Captivate.
yeah,
Yeah, I
100%.
like deep work too. That's a very good book.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm actually rereading it right now. But I like this look. I want to kind of go off script and kind of go into okay, so you in a world of traditional, I want to control everything. We're secondary educators, so we're looking at 45 to 55-minute bells and everything. And the research will tell you, if you do an hour and a half and then take an hour and a half off and then an hour and a half on, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, you can get that's where, Cal Newport says about the deep work. What needs to change in the system to help this fluent work go? I mean, we obviously have to teach mindset and understand that's always number one. The people leading and coaching in classrooms, that's always the biggest blocker. You've hit that. Um, and then what? That's my
Yeah, and
question. Yeah.
so I always encourage people to think about when you're giving students a task. So that's why that's the whole when depth of knowledge first came out, I was obsessed with that because
Mhm.
immediately to me it made sense on how um when you go into education, you're drilled on Bloom's taxonomy, and we all know it inside and outside and upside down. And then depth of knowledge came around, and that was Norman Webb's way of saying it's not even about that verb. The first time I saw like a wheel with all the verbs in it, I cringed because you could tell that somebody had missed the whole point. The whole point was don't focus on the verb. He's saying it's the task. The
Yeah.
task that you give the kids is where the rigor is.
Mhm.
And because you can create on a really low level, you can
Mhm.
evaluate on a really low thinking level, but you can also do comprehension and analysis on a really high cognitive level if you design the right task.
Mhm.
And so, one of the things that I really pulled away from was, have you ever read Diary of a CEO, Stephen
Mhm.
Bartlett?
Yep.
Okay, so huge fan, love that work. And he has one of his chapters loosely is on intentionally looking for discomfort.
Mhm.
And to me, that is where you really get the magic with students. And so I'll give you an example. Like mitochondria. Do you remember the definition of mitochondria?
Oh,
Mhm.
put you on spot on a live Zoom.
I cannot.
Powerhouse of the cell, right?
That's right.
So it's the
Energy
powerhouse of the cell.
source.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm afraid that people know that one. So I'll ask people what is the vacuole or the nucleotide, all those little parts of a cell. Then I
You're
point
killing
out,
me right now.
I
My
know,
worst
sorry.
subject was science.
That's right. We
vocab.
had,
Talk to
but no
Alli.
matter what state you live in, you're getting the structure of a cell 4 times, grades 4 through 12,
Not
right?
wrong. Yeah.
And how many of us can't recall any of it because it was probably taught to us in a lecture, and then we probably looked under a microscope in one of our 4 areas, and then we were done with that. So I'm working with a teacher, and I said, what if you did a lesson on the cell that made me interact with those pieces so deeply that I never forget at least 6 of the parts of a cell and how they function? And so I was really emphasizing metaphors at the time. And so we had done this cell metaphor lesson. And it was fascinating. 2 boys had built a Lego city. And then they went through each of the buildings and what part of the cell that they were representing. They had a blue river around the entire city as the cell wall, and then they pointed out the difference between plant and animal cells, and when you need a cell wall and when you don't. But the one that blew me away was 2 gals who did a diaper bag. And it was so well done that I never forgot ribosomes because of the way that they described the fibers of the diaper and how those were the ribosomes, and they had melted candy bar in the center of the diaper to be
Brilliant.
the nucleus, and then they had a nucleotoid inside of it because it was a Snicker. And they had taken another dirty diaper and put it in, not a real dirty diaper, but candy bar dirty diaper, and put it in a sealed Ziploc. And then that was the vacuole. I'm telling you, like, it was
makes sense.
I was blown away that all of a sudden I wasn't even the one who did the metaphor, but listening to them, it made sense. And those girls will be 40 years old and be able to whip out a diaper bag and go through it and understand the different functioning. And so to me, that's a really good example of how you create curiosity. You give kids autonomy. You show them it's the process, not the outcome. And, those are some of those crucial features of really rigorous learning that works. And so, and how many teachers don't do even one metaphor lesson a year and, maybe 2. And because I do believe in habituation, I believe that the secret is, here are my 15 really cool lesson frameworks, and this is how I merge them together, and this is how I shift so that I'm constantly making students a little more curious and connecting ideas.
Yeah.
So the discomfort part was nobody wants to do a metaphor. When you set that up, so many students are like, I'm not doing a metaphor. Or even, talking amongst 6 people, I'm not doing that. But you have to deliberately create scaled lessons where the discomfort is a part of it and just really support kids through that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing more discomforting than a Snickers bar in a in a diaper. But now I will never forget that right now. So I don't know. Alli, have you seen anything like that?
I mean, I think about the most discomforting class that I had in high school and in college was both physics. And physics in high school in many ways was better than physics in college because we had to build so many things. I had to build a trebuchet. I had to build an energy card. I had to build a home wiring project. I had to build a Ruse Goldberg like mousetrap type project. And I mean, it was so challenging to design those things with what I would consider very little instruction. But guess what? Like, I had to go and make all the meaning. It was very uncomfortable as a student, but it prepared me wildly for what I would have struggled so much more in college physics without those experiences.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that even though college physics was taught more traditionally, I mean, I just saw student after student drop that class. And it was a weed out class in college, which that's a whole other discussion. But like, it, it was incredibly uncomfortable in college seeing like all these people struggle, which is a very demanding
Hmm.
course. And it was taught really, really high level. I would say like the questions were a high DOK. Like you had to
Hmm.
apply what you were learning. But if you didn't, if you just did things like you had done, right? Like read the textbooks, do the homework questions, like study on a very surface level, you would fail that class.
Yeah.
And like you had to really be able to adapt your thinking. And I think those, even though I was really uncomfortable in high school and felt like I wasn't learning a ton because I like these projects would take like a week or two at a time. I actually they served me very, very well. Um, and there I had to learn a ton of vocabulary, right? Like
Hmm.
I had to apply it and build something from it. And I still remember coming into that class, which that teacher was ahead of his time. Um, and he would just like throw out wires and he'd be like, build a circuit.
Yeah. Exactly. It's exactly right because you don't want to give kids that Nestle Toll House wrapper. And that's what so many people make the error of doing is I'm so afraid they're going to mess up, but enjoy the mess up. I mean, get
Hmm.
twice the dopamine firing, and
Hmm.
I love that, Allie. I should have used Rube Goldberg. What was I thinking? That would have been a great, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for physics, and right, that's class is typically taken as a junior or senior in high school. It's like the perfect time to reinvigorate curiosity. You have like, and I think it was more uncomfortable because, right, what your whole point was 300 questions a day as a 4-year-old to two as a typical 10th or 11th grader. So it's like, what better ways? And high schools are just begging for it. Man, I was just subbing this past week in a chemistry classroom, and these students, they wanted to know about me. And then when they're like, "Oh, you podcast, oh, you skydive, like, oh, you
Mhm.
do you like you also sub, you tutor, like you don't live a boring life." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, because like life is meant to be lived." And like so many kids, they think that like, oh, they just have to do what they're told. And I was giving them, they wanted advice on like what should I consider, like, after high
Yeah.
schools, they're a bunch of
Hmm.
seniors. And I'm like,
Yeah.
think about the life you want to build, right? Like
Mm,
make meaning out of your experiences. I said, if you're not getting it, in whatever you are right now, like go find it.
yeah.
They're like hungry for that kind of
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah. And
Um,
you have to let them engage with each other. It's not, I think the biggest mistake that people make towards not having the organized chaos that the three of us love and making those meaning for yourself is we feel like what matters is them hearing us, and it couldn't be more wrong. I mean, them talking to each other is where, as long as you can design it so that it's productive talk, that's where the magic is. And
Hmm.
it's hard for educators to step back from that, I feel like. But yeah,
Yeah.
kudos to you because that is such a good lesson for the students.
We see this a lot because we're the capstone of our internship program, right? So when a student has to transition or use their academics for the professional self, that's when you get all kinds of these stories. And
Mhm.
you're spot on, Sandra. I mean, talk about like what Allie you said about building the life that you want, and then go create a metaphor for that. Like,
Yeah,
what does
yeah,
that look like,
yeah.
right? So that's well, as you both were kind of unpacking, I was just thinking like it's it's crazy. I mean, there were points in my career where I would be working with students, and I was kind of an early adapter to a lot of the digital portfolios, right? We would use just Google
Oh, yeah,
Drive and
yeah.
generic things, and now it's all over the place. And I distinctly remember one time a student shot back at me and basically said, "Look, you're here to teach me computer applications, not for me to tell you my story." And I
Mm,
was like, wow, that was damning. Like that was just like, okay, there you just threw it out there. So, you know, and I also like where we're falling short is like the measures and all these different things, the hard things to measure. And that's something that my coordinator and I are really kind of looking at and challenging students in an uncomfortable way. Because let's be honest, let's go back to the grades piece, right? The assessment. Who really wants the grades? It's not the parents, it's not the kids, it's the colleges. Right? And that's where we're starting to see this shift. Now it's shifting. So my question then is kind of back then when you do see something. So let's say, Allie, you were back in school and you had to build these things. Um, and this question is for you, Sandra, like there is an enormous amount of knowledge out there now, right? So if I needed to change something on like my back screen door, which I did this weekend, like I just look it up on YouTube or I go onto Reddit and talk about, okay, which one works the best and all these different things. How does this change Fluent Work? How does this, because a lot of our kids are like, yo, I don't need to talk to you, teacher. I got it right here, and it doesn't really mean that much anymore.
Okay,
How do we
yeah,
keep,
that's a good
yeah,
question.
yeah.
So when you're describing that, and thinking about it in that way, it was giving me, so one of the things that I always say is the greatest asset to CTE is that focus on skills.
Hmm.
And you can do that in any content area. It's not as if skill mastery is just owned by CTE,
Yes.
but I try to get people to think about two different things. So the first one, Peter, in answer to your question is, I remind people that all humans read for two reasons. What are the two reasons?
I mean,
To learn?
yeah.
We read for fun, entertainment, or
Okay.
we read for, I have to fix this door, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, Peter, when did you stop reading how to fix the door?
When I knew how to fix it.
When you knew how to fix it. Guess what students do?
Yeah.
They stop reading when they find the answer to whatever it is that you have given them. So if
Yeah.
you're doing the what did this and what did this and what did this and read this article, like
Hmm.
stop.
Yeah.
That is antiquated. Stop.
Hmm.
Because students are, instead of when you go down a roller coaster or you get a tattoo or you eat ice cream and you get that dopamine surge in your synapse and you're thinking like this is great, I'm going to keep doing this.
You just
When you
described my last weekend too, by the way. Got a tattoo, grab some. No, I'm just teasing.
But when you hand a student
Yeah.
reading and you give them six questions that all start with what, and you say, do this,
Hmm.
don't act surprised that they're not interested and don't act surprised that they aren't actually reading it and they're just looking for the questions. You would do the same thing.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
how humans learn to read. It's what we all do. We read for information or we're reading because we enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that and how you go back to what is the task you're giving me? Are you giving me a task that makes me want to dive in and figure it out? And I always say, whatever it is that you do the most lecture on, whatever it is that you think, I have to lecture this because students won't be able to figure it out, that's the thing that you need to make them figure it out
Mm.
and do it in, with a partner and have them present some facet of it so that you can say, okay, you were really close on that. And then, really, how do you master feedback? Because if you take the truth about how we read and you connect it to what I love most about CTE, and that is moving students from efficacy to collective efficacy, that is to me the most powerful part. And so if you think about at least once a month, I watch students get to take an engine apart. And the first time they do it, they're so clumsy and it's so awful for them and it takes them forever. And they talk to each other about what is this part and what is this part, and they lay them on the floor and then they have to reassemble it. And then as the year goes on and they learn more about the interrelationship between those different parts and what they're doing, you can see that not only do they believe in their own abilities and they see like, oh, I can make this change, then they also learn to believe in each other.
Hmm.
And to me, when you can take a student and really see like they have developed collective efficacy, they know that the three of us together can produce something better than any one of us apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you tie the reading is the how you teach. It's not the essence of what you're teaching, but giving them some kind of text and then making sure that students write, they read, they listen, they speak, and they think consecutively, then it really does just kind of come together, which is what life is really like. That's fixing that door. Did you do
Yeah.
it? Did you fix it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Come on. Of course I
That's
did.
right. That's right. You would have fixed it better if Allie and I had been there and the three of us were doing it together. But yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. It was a small part. It
In an
wasn't,
ideal
but
world
if
for
I was
my example.
reframing and everything, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh my
100%.
God.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I just feel that we focus too much on reading and not enough about, are you fluently reading in high school? If we know that you're reading at a subgrade level, do we ever let you say it out loud to develop fluency? Because without fluency, you're never going to reach a different level of reading capacity. And so, I don't know, there's a lot of genuine rules about literacy that we don't seem to follow in the classroom.
I can't say, other than in my master's program, I had any training on literacy, right? And yet in the real world, we constantly hear readers are leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, any CEO I have personally met can list off a dozen books that they've recently read.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so true. It is. Yeah, you need to develop that passion in students. And one time I had made the mistake of I walked into I think it might have been an auto class, and a boy was reading this really thick technical module book, just like how a product worked. And I said, "Ooh, that looks like fun." And he said, "Oh, I love to read these." And I was so disappointed in myself because I thought, oh, it doesn't look like fun to me because I don't like to read technical manuals. But he loved it. And that's what, and he was born to be an auto tech. And I never forgot that. I never lost appreciation for what I might find fun to read, somebody else would not, and vice versa. Yeah.
Well, I think on the academic side, when you say I'm a recovering academic, right? Like, I mean, it's true because, technical reading for so long was not considered literacy by purists. I
Right.
mean, it just wasn't. And I can tell you I mean, how many times our business educators and computer coding teachers, and this was 15 years ago, would be in professional development, like within our own school, and argue it, and other core four educators would be like, no, that's not. So they would look at that young man looking at that huge, technical reading on an automobile or an engine and say that's not reading. And that just blew our minds. We're like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? So not only now, like we have the opportunity to really see this, and I'm really glad. I mean, good for you for telling that story. I mean, I'm sure the kid probably didn't even remember it, but
Sure
that's a
not. Yeah.
moment where we're all like, I mean, I'll go back to Jason Van Nuss's, like how you say the terms and how you speak and how you act. I mean, I would have done the same thing. I mean, seriously, if I was walking by a kid and he had like Hamlet, I'd be like,
It's
oh,
like this thick.
yeah, right. So, but we have to be able to understand, how does that literacy look like that. So, if as we kind of, round out, I want to ask a couple of questions here. Like, what's just, obviously the book is Fluent Work, and we'll put up how to get to it. But what do you think is one classroom habit that schools can adopt, like now?
To really drive change, if I was going to adopt any one thing, I would make it evident that I value their work and have some progress on the wall, like some kind of progress check on the wall. We do a lot of we do those. We have graphic design students who have made these nice flow charts, and we track really important criteria that's not about grades for students so that they can see, oh, look, like in a welding class, going through the different forms of welds, we don't hold students to the same tiers. Not everybody has to stick weld and then MIG weld and then TIG weld. You go at your own pace. And so within each one of those, what are those performance marks? And so we just really want it to be visible so that students can value the progress that they're making. And, gosh, I know it was back in the 60s when the Harvard Business Review had done an article, and it's never been debunked that making progress and getting recognition, two best motivators for all of us.
Yeah.
And it's just true. And so I know teachers who have like a wall of fame and they showcase where their alumni are. And I think that goes to Alli's story about how students want to know. I hold on to alumni like they're gold. I'm like, can you do this snippet for me? Can you come back and talk to the kids for me? And I've been this one went into precision manufacturing, and within just a few years, he had mastered the use of the tools and the AI with his company. And he was driving a Corvette, had his own house. He was like 24, and I used to be like, "Can you please come in and drive your Corvette and talk to the students?"
Yes.
But students want to see really where am I going and what kind of life am I trying to make, and then how is this field, my passion area, where can I go with this? They want to see what does the future hold in every one of those career fields. And I think it's really important to put the ladder in front of them and show them, and then support them through that. But I think that, in education, one of the pieces in the book is about getting feedback right. And I always say, last time I challenged you guys, so there's 4 kinds of feedback. And 2 of them teachers are really good at. The 2 that we are really good at is corrective feedback.
So it was finding fault. That was one.
Love to do that.
Yeah.
And evaluative feedback.
Yep.
And so the minute you tell somebody you're a 72% on this, they don't want to hear anything else you have to say.
Yep.
At least not for that time being, right? And so what I try to do with that whole bringing constructivism into holistic literacy approach is use descriptive feedback and use directive feedback. And even more importantly, have students with each other giving descriptive feedback and giving directive feedback on different projects and different activities. And that's where you really get the buy-in from students, because they see she's about the learning or he's about the learning, and they just want me to learn. And I think the more that students see that you really just want them to develop the skills and to learn, you just win them over. That's how it's done. And so I tried to give a blueprint for people.
No, I mean, and I love that, because I will tell you again, like you can see like, let's just go back to that welding piece where it's visual. I know I don't even have to ask, and you're probably going to say yes to this. There's collective efficacy happening in that class. So one kid sees another kid who's not quite to their level, and they're like, "Yo, let me show you something." And and again, this is something that Alli and I always talk about. Like once you get that going in a classroom, and that's where a teacher can be lazy. Like you can have the conversations. You can really kind of go into that. For example, we had this happen in our internship course where we have 2 students working at the district IT 203. And they're working on different things, and we do check-ins, one-on-one check-ins. And just today I was having a check-in with one of the students, and he was like, "Oh, so and so, who's the other student intern in there, who's been in there the entire year, and this student just started in January, was like, he's super helpful." Boom, there you go. I love that.
Versus a class where at the end of the year somebody wouldn't even be able to name everybody in the class. Like that's a sign. That's your sign. Yeah.
Here's your sign. Oh my gosh. Ron White, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a good random throwback. Thank you, Sandra, for breaking this Fluent Work down for us. I was thinking so much about descriptive and directive feedback right there as you were talking about it and how powerful that can be. You dropped a lot in this episode that I know our listeners are going to well, if they weren't listening carefully, they're gonna have to re-listen. Okay, there's
Which
your
happens.
thing. It does
Oh
happen. I
yeah,
love
I do.
re-listening
I
to.
re-listen to them sometimes too. Yeah.
This is why we love you, Sandra.
Yeah.
So, I guess Peter, you haven't done a final thought in a while. So, what are you thinking as we're rounding out this episode? Before we kind of.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sure. I'll try it out. I really, I love how academic, kind of, traditionalists really see the power of CTE. I love that transition. You're always, just being honest with that, because I think we're all starting in an academic world. We're like, oh, okay, we got to get, and then we see this new light in CTE, and then it
Mm,
opens up really great works, good books, good conversations, fluent work, literacy, right? Like that's something that not a lot. I mean, I think you're kind of cornered the market on it right now around CTE, right? What does fluency mean? What does a fluent student mean? What does that mean in thinking, communication, navigating professional work, contributing to their communities? What is that in a
Yeah.
fluent manner? And then how does literacy play a part in that? Literacy to me is a word that used to make me cringe.
Yeah.
Like as I can tell you, in I did not do well. I would say, well, I mean, we can go to grades, but like in English and reading courses, I got through college reading one book. Um, somehow, I probably spent a lot of money on the old Cliff Notes and things like that, and but now it's one of my favorite things to do.
mm,
I've got behind me, you see books up there, but it kind of looks like that in a lot of my rooms. This is obviously a weird background. It's not real, but I do have all my books underneath a cabinet right up here. I reread them, and it does open up things. And to be vindicated, saying I read this manual, or I
mm.
read code, is something that I love that you brought up, and how we can embrace the future of work and the future of learning, and how literacy as well as educational systems is transitioning into what's coming next. So I really enjoyed it, and thank you for that. Are we
Thanks.
missing anything else you want to say about Fluent Work in the book?
I would just say this is a whole other um, podcast, but the part three of the book really is about celebrating your interest in that field. And so I do a lot with how to embed partners into work daily or weekly. And so there is this whole section of ask who, not how.
Mm,
And so I would just challenge anybody to really step into 2026 and beyond by thinking about who can support this in my classroom, not how. And
mm.
so, yeah, so we'll just use that as the intrigue to make them more curious to see.
How do people connect with you to get you to do and work with them in a workshop? You travel all over the states, all over Texas. That's big shout out to
I love
Texas.
Texas. The
But yeah.
LinkedIn's probably the easiest.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Got
But
it. Got it.
I had to follow Disrupt on LinkedIn, so that's where you find me.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Now, thank
Well,
you both.
yeah, and thank you so much for being here. The second time, you're second member. You're in the
Right.
second member group.
That's great.
Likely, probably the third and the fourth. We have a few of those. But really, thank you for sharing your book. All that will be in the show notes. But just being who you are and leading this charge, it goes quick, but it takes time to build. And you've been a patient builder who is totally ingrained into CTE, working with ACTE in the Fort Wayne area and beyond. So thank you so much for all the work
Thank
that you
you.
do.
Yeah, thank you guys. You're great hosts. It's such a great podcast. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe. You know what? We always challenge, Ellie. I think we're going to challenge people to do it again. Send this out to 2 people who have never heard of it, because each one of these are its own micro class that you can, master class that you can work on. I buy my notebooks by the dozen, and you can definitely connect with all these professionals. So we appreciate you. We'll be back next week, but for Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. We'll see you next time on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Disrupt Education Podcast. If this episode sparked an idea, challenged your thinking, or helped you see education differently, well, that's exactly why we're here. We're highlighting real stories and bold ideas shaping the future of learning. A quick thank you to our sponsor, UScience BrightPath, the next generation platform helping students make personalized decisions as they move from education to career. If you're serious about connecting students to real opportunity, head to uscience.com/disrupteducation-podcast. Request a demo and let them know you heard about UScience right here on the Disrupt Education Podcast. For more episodes and clips and ways to connect, you can always visit disrupteducationpodcast.com. I'm Peter Hostrawser. Keep disrupting. We'll see you next time on the podcast.